Hi, my name is Amanda Frazier, and my thematic unit this time is over the wonderful, fun world of pumpkins. Um, I chose this as my theme, and when I first started, I had no idea of all the different crazy, fun things that you can do with pumpkins to teach all kinds of objectives to your students. The way we would start our thematic unit would be by going to a pumpkin patch as a class on a field trip, and the students would get to pick out their pumpkins. They get to pick out all different sizes and shapes, textures, um, and not just pumpkins, but gourds and different kinds of crazy looking things like that. We would conclude our thematic unit by having a fall celebration party, which would probably be around Halloween and that time of the month and everything. We would invite parents to come, and they would be able to see the different things that the students would have learned through the entire unit. The way we would start out each of our days would be by doing the interactive math board, and it would have the same type of pumpkin theme to it. And there's a picture of it right there. We would start our math board out by doing the calendar. We would do the days of the week. A student would be chosen to choose the day, the previous day, and the following day. And they would choose the month, and they would put the new day on the calendar. And that would look kind of like that. Excuse me. The next aspect would be the clock. Students would practice telling time on a clock. They would match the time on the clock, and they would draw it in with a dry erase marker on their bottom clock. And let's see. The next thing they would do would be counting by ones. And we have these little pumpkin pictures. A student would get a new one in. They would put in the little slot every day, and that would be counting to 100. We would eventually get to the number 100, and then we would also add a straw into the cup. And then you have, in your straw cup, you have your ones place, your tens place, and your hundreds place. And the next thing we would do would be identifying the weather and graphing the results. We would identify the weather by using the website math.com. So that would be integrating technology into our daily routine. We would use it with a smartboard. We'd use it with the class computer, just anything like that. And then we would compare what the weather.com says about what the weather is for the day with what it actually feels like outside. And we would mark that with a dry erase marker. And then we would put the symbol for what it is, for what this is, down on our symbol chart. And the next thing we would do is we would graph how many days it was cloudy, how many days it was rainy, how many days it was sunny, and we would look at our graph at the end of each month and see how that all worked out for the month. The next thing we would do would be counting by fives, and each day a student would write another tick mark on here, and that's how they would count by fives. And then they would count by tens by using Unifix cubes. And then each day they would add another Unifix cube to the collection. They could tell odd and even by doing that. They could be able to count 10, 20, 30. If that was our number for the day, they'd be able to count. They'd add the third one on, and then they would count 10, 20, 30. And that would be all for the math board. My grade level is kindergarten, so it wouldn't make it too extreme. The math station that I would have would be different counting things. There's a picture of my math station. One of the activities would be to have plastic pumpkins that look like this. They're little jack-o'-lanterns on one side, and you put the number on the other side. And what they would do is they would take these out of the basket. They would find the number on the pumpkin, like that, and they put the pumpkins in order according to what number is on the pumpkin. So there'd be 1, and then 2, and so on. And that'd be the first activity they do in their math station. They would put them in order from 1 through 10, as it says down there. Then we would start out with 1 through 5, and then we would go 1 through 10, then eventually we'd make it up to 1 through 20, doing this activity. The next math station activity we would do would be similar to the first. You'd put the pumpkins on the table, you'd find the number on the pumpkins, and then you would actually match the number of candies to the numbers on the pumpkins. And so we'd have our little candy tub sitting there. And so, like this one would be, they'd look at this pumpkin, it says 1, so you'd put 1 piece of candy in the pumpkin up there. Then this one says 2, so the student would actually count out 2 pumpkin or 2 candies, and they put it in the number 2, and they'd go so on. And this would be the same as the other. They would start at 1 through 5, and then go on through 1 through 10, and then eventually 1 through 20. And that's the math station. The next one, we would have a science station that we would do. And this one, I had a lot of fun putting this one together, doing this one. There's a picture of what my math station looks like. Science station, sorry. The science station would actually have 3 different aspects to it. This is one that I found that I thought it was kind of neat. It's called Fun with Jack, and what it would be is a pumpkin that's cut up, and all of its insides and all of the nastiness of the inside of a pumpkin and the outside of a pumpkin would be put into a huge gallon jar, which I don't have that. This is my little rendition of it. But you'd put the pumpkin guts and stuff in a jar and seal it with hot glue to never be opened again because it would be really nasty. But you leave it sealed like that for the rest of the school year even, and you watch it decompose and you see what's going to happen with him. So they would check on Jack. They would draw a picture of what you think Jack will look like next week or next month. And they would write the date. And then they'd check their prediction the next time they come, the next week, the next month, or whatever we would decide to do. They would check it and they would compare it with what they thought it was going to be and see if they were right or if they were wrong and what was different. Another thing we would do with our science station would be to explore some gourds. They would look and explore the gourds with their senses, using their eyes, their nose, and their hands. They would write down which ones are bigger and smaller and heavier and lighter. And then they would draw a picture of what they've seen and write a describing word about it. So that would be, they would look at the gourds, like one of these crazy looking things, and they would write down that it's bumpy or smooth, bigger or smaller, heavy or light, and that's how they would describe that. And that'd be one of their activities. Their other science activity would be involving a big pumpkin and several little pumpkins. And what they would do, they'd move the small pumpkins around the big pumpkin. That's their first step. They would move the small pumpkins above and below the big pumpkin. So they would just stack them on top and put them underneath the bottom, things like that. And then they would move the small pumpkins in front of, behind, and beside the big pumpkin. And that would be what they would do for their science stations. Some more activities would include reading a story, and for our reading and language arts,